Yes, I hate clutter. Yes, I have OCD. Let's go ahead and talk about it. Welcome back to my channel. If you know me, the people in my life, if I told them I was on a decluttering journey, they would look at me like I'm a crazy person because I already live very minimally. My house is very minimal. But at the end of the day, everybody still has unnecessary stuff in their home unless you are a true minimalist. My goal in all of this is not to become a true traditional minimalist, but my goal is just to go through our house, our home, and get rid of the unnecessary. I think everybody should do this. There's been a couple of comments that I want to address. Somebody asked me if I have OCD, and yeah, I was actually diagnosed after living my whole life a certain way. And I have a few different forms of OCD, but last year I was finally diagnosed with OCD. And that diagnosis was amazing. Maybe more someday I can talk about it. Not quite ready to open up about that quite yet. But having to have things a certain way in my life for me is a part of my OCD. Having things in certain places, having things look a certain way, that's all part of my OCD. And then there was this other comment that somebody said regarding me like cleaning out my daughter's room. You know, I mean, it is what it is. You can comment whatever you want, obviously. Like, I have no problem with that. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. But if you don't understand, and not that you even have to understand OCD to understand what it's like to live minimally or to reduce clutter, I think it's really important to remember that not everybody lives the same way. So what works for you may not work for me. When I, you know, because my brain is obviously different than yours, and my brain maybe works differently than some people because I have OCD. But again, even if you don't have OCD, removing clutter and removing unnecessary things, it's really beneficial for your mental health, and there's scientific evidence that backs that up. If you don't believe me, just do your own research, and you will find that having less things to look at in your home, it really benefits your mental health. I think this idea of overconsumption is a huge problem that especially those of us, you know, obviously I can't speak to any other region in the world, but for those of us in the United States, you know that overconsumption is a real thing. And I try not to. My husband would probably say otherwise. He probably says, no, you buy a lot of, you know, unnecessary things. And yeah, you know, that may be true. I think we're all guilty of it, but I know that I'm not as bad as the majority of people. I don't want to pass that along to my daughters. I came from a family that has a lot of mental health disorders, amongst other things, but my grandma in particular was an actual hoarder. Talked about before, growing up, we lived in a really clean house, which I think was, you know, I think like my mom was really particular in having a clean house, maybe because growing up her house wasn't very clean. Whereas I adapted that because I always keep a clean house, but also, like I said before, my mom it was all very nice and clean and organized, but there was just a lot of stuff. Just a lot of stuff, and maybe it's a generational thing, I'm not sure, but like I said, there was like, I mean, there was excess of a lot, like even pictures, which I don't think is bad. I think you should definitely have like family pictures around your house, and I do, but that's just one example. It's like there was a crap ton of pictures all over our house, and just a lot of everything. My mom collected things. She would collect like Raggedy Ann dolls, and we had this whole case from floor to ceiling, just filled with Raggedy Ann dolls. You know, like I said, it was very nice and it looked nice and organized, but it was just, our house was filled with a lot of stuff. And I don't want to pass that along to my daughters. I don't want them, and I know other people in my life, they have a problem maybe collecting things or buying things, and they just have them in their house, and then they have a really hard time letting go of those things. And I don't want to pass on to my daughters that they should have like an attachment to things. Because like one of my friends, she has a lot of things in her house and she can't get rid of them because for whatever reason, she has some sort of an attachment to these things. And at the end of the day, I always keep in the back of my mind that things are just things. What if that thing broke? What if it got, you know, caught in a fire or whatever? Like, what would happen to your mental health if that happened? You have to be okay with just being you on your own. Like if you got everything ripped away from you, would you still be okay? And I think a lot of people really struggle with that. I think they really find identity in a lot of their things and a lot of their stuff. And just going back to kind of what I said before in regard to your mental health is that you feel less chaotic in your mind when you have less things in your house. I think somebody else commented on my video, they said, you know, a clean and clutter-free house is a clean and clutter-free mind. And I absolutely love that. I think that is 100% true. I think that it helps reduce depression. It helps reduce anxiety. And it's not even that I think that, it's that there's actually research backing this up. And so, you know, why I'm doing this and obviously sharing this with whoever wants to watch it, why I'm on a decluttering journey, is to help hopefully motivate others and inspire others, because I know and realize the importance of having a clutter-free home. I've lived in a home with a lot of stuff, and I've lived in a home with not a lot of stuff. And so I've lived at really two opposite ends of the spectrum here, and I can tell you that I feel mentally more at peace and just in general happier, and my mental health is way better living with minimal things. Somebody else commented, you know, and she was kind of, again, you're entitled to your own opinions, but she was kind of like digging at me in regards to my daughter's room. But the thing is I think it's so important to teach your children that you should have a clean and tidy and organized space, and you shouldn't be holding on to these things. One of the comments that was left was like, you know, because I threw away two rocks in my daughter's room. We don't need to have rocks in our room. I'm sorry, but rocks are something that are for outside, and that's a rule in my home. And if that's not a rule in your home, that's okay, and I respect that as well. In my home, it's a rule. We don't bring rocks inside our house. And I think it's important to, you know, teach our children that we should be tidying up after ourselves. We should be putting our toys away and cleaning our space up and putting our clothes away after the laundry's done, because I mean, I feel like that's just kind of common courtesy, because then when they're at school or maybe they're at a friend's house or a family member's house, you know, the expectation is that you clean up after yourself. It's a common courtesy, and it starts in your home. Like truly, it starts in your home. Again, just having this, you know, this idea of attaching yourself to these things, I think it's just really beneficial that, you know, it's something I feel strongly about, that we as human beings, you should not be attaching yourself to things, and I want to pass that message along to my daughters as well. I know that this video is kind of all over the place, but I feel like I've kind of had like I've needed to get kind of this message out as to why I am on a decluttering journey, and just the reason why I'm doing it, and the importance of, you know, what it means to me, and why I think others should do it as well. I think that if you just try it, you'll see a difference. Like, just try it, and then if it doesn't work for you, then you don't have to live that way. But living minimally, living clutter-free really is a lifestyle. And another thing that I wanted to mention is that the proof is in the pudding as far as living clutter-free. And somebody, you know, they had commented on one of my videos, and I found it very interesting because, you know, there are certain types of people that feel the need to comment these things when people live differently than others, or maybe they don't agree with something, and so they leave, you know, maybe a comment that has like just a different tone. And like I said, I think the proof is in the pudding. I think that happy people who are good and confident on how they live their life, they're not going to leave those types of comments on other people's videos. But people who maybe are unhappy, or maybe I'm triggering something in them, I just think that's a huge opportunity to like look within and say, why does this trigger me? Why does this girl on YouTube, why are her videos triggering to me? Why is it triggering to me that somebody else is keeping her daughter's room organized and clean and tidy? I don't know. I feel like it's a really good opportunity to look inward and just kind of ask yourself really what's going on. And then maybe it's an opportunity for you to take it and to, you know, try some of my tips and my ways of living, I suppose you could say, and adapt it into your lifestyle and just see if it makes a difference. Because I really think that if you do it, you will be a better, happier person, and maybe less anxious or less depressed. Because again, just like I'm telling you guys, it makes a huge difference when you look around your space and it's clean and it's minimal. It literally makes you feel less anxious. I'm telling you. Give it a try. Let me know. Feel free to continue commenting, because I like hearing the comments. I like hearing, you know, other people's perspectives and all of that. But yeah, just give it a shot. So if you're watching and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. I'm still on a decluttering journey. Have one room left on my upstairs, and then I'll move to the downstairs, and we'll go from there. So give this video a thumbs up if you like it. Thanks for watching. See you in my next video.